For the first time in 21 years, we could be seeing another installment of the Battle of Ontario, the Leafs and the Sens. That's right. If the playoffs were to begin today, Carlo, that would be the first round matchup today. We're going through the matchup starting down the middle. We know the Leafs have Matthews, have Tavares. How does Ottawa stack up down the middle relative to Toronto, in your opinion?
Well, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking of the idea of it because all the bad blood we saw between these two teams. And it's a rivalry that the province of Ontario needs. And if you're looking at how to handicap this matchup, let's start down the middle, as you just mentioned. Obviously, Austin Matthews leads the way. He's the guy that's won the Hart. He's the guy that's won the Rocket. He's probably going to be the dominant player in that series. But the Maple Leafs with Tavares and Matthews, you look at their recent success or lack of success come playoff time, they have a hard time scoring goals in the playoffs when they come. So for Timmy Stützle and Norris and maybe even Shane Pinto, they've got the excitement and the juices are going to be flowing for them. And you got to think that because of that new, fresh excitement for them, maybe they have a little bit more luck on their side with this. But obviously, if I had to handicap who the favorite is or who the stronger side is, it's definitely the Toronto Maple Leafs because of the two-headed monster that they pose with Austin Matthews and John Tavares. Not just because of the name, but the experience that they bring come playoff time.
It's a matchup of bad experience versus no experience down the middle between Toronto and Ottawa in the postseason. I think that continues on the wing as well. And we've been waiting forever, as has Brady Tkachuk, to finally play in a playoff series. And there's been so much discourse around Brady Tkachuk, the way he plays, how it's suited for playoff hockey, but he can be undisciplined at times. How do you think that could factor in to a playoff series?
Well, they got to find a way to let him sleep, because if you awake the bear that is Brady Tkachuk, he could absolutely be an impact in this series. And you go back to his brother Matthew and the impact that he had in the series against the Maple Leafs a couple years ago. He was a difference maker in that series. And we've talked to Brady Tkachuk on our show. We've listened to him talk about, the success that he's witnessed his brother have. He wants to have that same success. He's dying to have playoff hockey on his resume. And you just know that any type of series he finds himself in, he's going to want to be an impact player and maybe a difference maker. But when I talk about difference makers, I look directly at the Toronto Maple Leafs, because they have two guys on the wing that are game-changing players and are difference makers in the game with William Nylander and Mitch Marner. And I know they fall under the umbrella of not much playoff success with the rest of the group, but those are the two guys that you would probably lean on to take over a series against this. I know they got Claude Giroux. He's got a little bit of playoff experience. He's got the rivalry between the Philly Flyers and the Pens. David Perron's won a Stanley Cup. They could help close the gap there, but I give a slight edge right now to the Maple Leafs.
Let's look at the back end, where clearly the Leafs made some big additions in the offseason, bringing in Ekman Larsson, bringing in Chris Tanev. Ottawa probably needs some work leading into the trade deadline. Perhaps Toronto does too. Who do you think has the edge between the two teams?
Well, I would give the edge directly to the Toronto Maple Leafs on this one as a group, because I think as a group, they are more balanced, they are deeper, and they have guys that fit that mold of being playoff-style defensemen. But the best defenseman in this series would be Jake Sanderson of the Ottawa Senators. I think he's dynamic offensively. He can impact the game offensively more than any other player I think the Maple Leafs on their roster can. But you look at guys like McCabe and Tanev, I think those guys would take over a series like this.
Yeah, that shutdown pair for Toronto will be very difficult for opposing offenses to contend with. And on the subject of opposing offenses, I think both goaltenders, perhaps three goaltenders, could factor into this series. Allmark for Ottawa and the tandem of Stolarz and Wall for Toronto. Who do you think has the edge there?
I'm giving the edge here to Allmark and the Senators just because of experience, right? Allmark has won a Vezina Trophy. He's played on a really good Boston team. I know they've had their troubles in the playoffs with him and Swayman there. But with Toronto, there's still a lot of question marks. Like Joseph Wall, he played great last year in the games that he did play in the playoffs when he came in, but he wasn't a guy that they could depend on in Game 7 when they needed him the most. And for Stolarz, yes, he won a Stanley Cup riding behind Bobrovsky, but there's still no experience there. I would give the edge to the Ottawa Senators and Allmark.
Carlo, I took it upon myself to set the odds for this theoretical series. I listed Toronto as a minus 160 favorite in the first round against Ottawa should they play. What do you make of that?
I think that's fair, but I would give it a little more on the Toronto edge. I'd go minus 175, maybe minus 200, because I think home ice can play a factor. And think about it, even if the games go into Ottawa, Leaf Nation is there in Ottawa cheering them on too. So based on how we've ranked each position, I'm giving the Maple Leafs a bigger margin of being a favorite in this series.
Senators have won 4 straight games against Toronto, and we'll find out if we play at least 4 in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs.